Okay, everybody, we've got a little over a week now it's been since we've gotten the Oscar nominations out. And I was kind of looking forward. I was like, okay, well, when's, kind of the next discussion video and stuff? And I was like, well, PGA's coming up, right? And it's like, oh, no, PGA's not till like the end of March. Well, usually that and DGA and a couple other, they're usually not long after the nominations are out. But PGA, unless I've got my dates wrong here, that one is going to be on I think is that a Saturday on the 19th, or is that a... Yeah, that's on a Saturday. Yep, Saturday the 19th of March, which I believe is just a little over a week away from the Oscars. So that's probably the latest I've seen a Producers Guild award in a long time. Writers Guild is going to be the same weekend on that Sunday, the 20th. Let's see, the Directors Guild is actually going to beat all these. It'll be a week before PGA, which is funny because I think Directors Guild, we're all pretty certain that's going to go to Jane Campion this year. And it seems like, that Directors Award, that seems like that's the easiest of these guilds to kind of sort out. BAFTA is going to be the following weekend. Critics' Choice, I'm not for certain on this. I've heard it'll also be on the same day, the 13th of March there, so Sunday the 13th. Okay, no, we're not going there. Let's see here. So Producers Guild and Writers Guild would be two of the last ones. Now, Writers Guild usually is, again, toward the tail end there. Producers Guild, I thought, wow, that's really late. And SAG, by the way, though, SAG will beat all these for the next major one that we'll do, active predictions on and stuff. I think I wasn't planning on it, actually, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, that's a little over a week away here, the 27th. I'm like, you know what? Let me go. I'm going to, when we're done with my kind of topics here today, I'm going to go ahead and just give some updated predictions there for who's going to win. Some of the categories look a little more obvious than others, but I don't know. I think there'll be some good discussions to be had there. Speaking of discussion, so I kind of thought about it. I'm like, there's been a few topics that have been sprung around a little bit since the nominations have come out. We've gotten a little bit of time to think, okay, how's stuff looking a week later? In retrospect, did any performance by a film on Oscars morning really change our perspective on things, after we've been given a little bit of time to think about it? And I think largely in the tech categories, not really. I mean, it seems at this point, when we get down... I'll exclude the shorts for now. I wanted to have a little bit more time to think about those. Probably off the cuff, I would say you're looking at Long Goodbye, Queen of Basketball, or Three Songs for Benazir winning the doc short... Not in that order, but the doc short and the live-action short categories. And then it's probably a toss-up between Windshield Wiper and Robin for animated short, unless Beastia upsets. But, if we want to quickly handicap those... And then for the feature categories as well, I'm just going by the Gold Derby list here, just by how they have theirs. Encanto seems to be the one to beat for animated feature right now. Summer of Soul and Flea, I think, are really going to be competitive in the doc feature category, so maybe watch out for something kind of out of left field to upset there, like Ascension or Riding with Fire. Something really offbeat could win there. And in the international feature category, even though I was, Drive My Car seems to be pretty far ahead, with the screenplay nomination as well, I would say Worst Person in the World is obviously the one that's most likely to upset between the five. Flea also has multiple nominations in that category as well. But I don't know. I think I Drive My Car does have the picture and the director nomination on top of screenplay, so obviously I still think that one's ahead. But, again, maybe on a weird thing, something else could win. But I think Drive My Car is probably, again, the one to beat there. And then for the tech categories, I think for the most part we're looking at a Dune mini-sweep here. Because visual effects looks pretty good. Score, pretty solid right now. Editing, I would say probably for Dune. Let's see here. Probably, cinematography as well. I would say those four look really good right now. Production design, I still think it's a little bit up in the air for me. Nightmare Alley getting that picture nomination makes me stop and think about that one a little bit. Like, okay, if there was enough passion to get that one a picture nomination over stuff like Tick, Tick, Boom, which looked a little more obvious, over being the Ricardos, over a couple of these other ones, okay, maybe that one is actually going to take home something, and production design seems to be the one that would be most obvious for that one. The sound category, it's probably Dune, but I can see some love for No Time to Die, or maybe even West Side Story getting in there. Remember the last Skyfall tied for sound editing there, so that I don't think we need to dismiss some of the other competitors in that category. I think Dune is definitely still in play for the sound category, but yeah. The song category, I know right away a lot of people were saying No Time to Die. But I think that one, other than maybe, the Diane Warren one, I had no idea. Otherwise, I probably would have predicted it. Probably aside, well, I wouldn't even brush that one aside 100%. I'd say the Belfast one is probably the first I would dismiss there. But the other four, I can see an argument for each of them winning. I mean, obviously, No Time to Die seems like it has, the star power of Billie Eilish behind it and stuff. And the last two Bond films have each won this category. So it makes sense why that one would be kind of the projected frontrunner. Then you have Beyonce getting her, I believe, her first nomination for this, for Be Alive from King Richard. And King Richard, unlike Belfast, is the only other Best Picture nominee in this category. But it seems like that one, that's the one I put ahead right now. Encanto, of course, we can't dismiss. What's the one I hadn't even heard the joke. Well, I'd heard the meme or whatever about it. The Bruno one or something. We don't talk about Bruno or whatever. I'd heard it, but I was like, I didn't know what it was. And then pretty soon I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. So I don't know if that's enough to push Dos Oruguitas over the edge and beat out some of these competitors, but I don't know. And then again, I think if I don't know if they're going to change it this year or not. But if they ever start putting who the nominees are for these tech categories, I think if it's screenplay or lower, they don't put the name of the person involved on the actual Oscar ballot. But if they ever did, I think if they put Diane Warren's name on there, something like Four Good Days, the song from that one, actually might have a shot. But I don't know. I just don't. If some of these other competitors here in the last few years, if they couldn't do it for her, I really don't see how this one would. All right, let's see what else for the tech categories here we haven't mentioned. Costume design and makeup are probably the only other two I haven't talked about here. But makeup, I'm just going Eyes of Tammy Faye right now. Though Dune would make sense, Cruella would make sense, House of Gucci I had winning this category for a while. And then in the costume design category, probably, I'm just going to say Cruella on that one for now. But again, I think West Side Story, having the Best Picture nomination, though of course, again, you've got Dune and Nightmare Alley also in this category with picture nominations. West Side Story would make sense as kind of an upset winner there. Kind of feeling a little bit like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a few years ago, where that did take a tech category as well as an acting prize. Which, right now, Ariana DeBose seems to be the one taking supporting actress there. Let's see. Yeah, in the screenplay categories, I'm looking at Licorice Pizza and Power of the Dog, pretty much like everyone else. I think, though, Belfast, right now, I don't think I have Belfast winning anything. So if they have to give it something, I can see Brana winning for screenplay there the way he did win at the Globes. On top of it, Licorice Pizza, I think, did underperform Oscars morning. So, its only nominations are for PTA himself. So either that means, he's a shoo-in, a lock to win this, or it means they didn't really see Licorice Pizza very widely across the Academy, or they just didn't like it enough widely across several categories there. So it's vulnerable. So it's like it's one of the two. But I think Licorice Pizza I do have out front right now, but I think Belfast is actually maybe closer on that one's heels than maybe some people think. And then, in Adapted, I do think, it's Power of the Dogs to lose, I think definitely in that one. But if there's a sense of we're giving too much to Jane Campion, which I don't think there is. I mean, we saw last year Frances won 2 Oscars, Chloe Zhao won 2 Oscars last year in the same night. So I'm like, I don't see how that argument cuts against Jane Campion and makes a difference there. I think the one, though, that probably would upset there is probably Coda, since that has the picture nomination. Again, even though I know Drive My Car and Dune are also Best Picture nominees in that category, I just feel like if Coda, if it's not going to win supporting actor in a kind of an upset there, screenplay seems to be the second most likely in that respect. Okay, So, so that was, really none of my big kind of talking points here are really about any of those categories there. It's kind of all, and also I think really quick, supporting actress. That one, I think Ariana DeBose to lose. Yeah, it's hers to lose, absolutely. And I really don't see any stumbling blocks for her. It seems like, especially West Side Story being a Best Picture nominee, that doesn't really feel like it's in play in very many other categories. Again, arguably for me, other than maybe costume design, it really feels like, okay, that feels like a, Marriage Story, which actually was in the same category. It feels like, some of these other films in recent years where it's like, Judas and the Black Messiah last year, even though it did end up winning song, it was like supporting actor felt like the category for that film. It's like, put it in stone, put it in cement, whatever. It's there. It's 100% going to happen. So it's starting to feel that way for Ariana DeBose. So so that's that one. Otherwise, I do think there's an argument to be had in the other, or a conversation to be had in the other categories here. Again, other than director, there is one talking point I want to get into with director, but it's not necessarily about who's going to win it. Again, I think Jane Campion far ahead, very much so. Okay, so, I guess we're going to start here with the Best Picture. One thing here, I've seen a lot of people talking about this in, really, I guess, in the few hours after the Oscars were announced there, and everybody's talking about where's Spider-Man, and it's like, well, if you follow this stuff, guys, you'll notice Spider-Man didn't really have the best trajectory for Best Picture nomination. It didn't land at PGA, which I thought if any bellwether was gonna happen, anything that says, okay, this is actually possible, if you want to be gutsy on it, start putting it in, it needed that PGA nomination. The Producers Guild, sometimes like Deadpool, Wonder Woman, some of these more comic book films lately that have made money, been critical hits, they've been nominating them sometimes. Spider-Man couldn't break into that top 10. And that was on a list that did include two films that were not in for Best Picture, being The Ricardos and Tick, Tick, Boom. So, so I think in that way, a lot of people have just been talking about, well, they should put it in because it's so popular. I'm like, okay, well, this isn't the 60s or the 70s anymore, or even earlier than that. It's like, okay, I get it. There was a long time there where it was like, okay, your biggest blockbuster of the year, whether it's Towering Inferno or Jaws or Star Wars, some of these films would be nominated for Best Picture. Some of them arguably were in the hunt to win. Several of them would take several wins. Jaws won every Oscar was nominated for except Best Picture. Star Wars won 4 or 5 competitive categories and 1 or 2 special Oscars for 7 total wins, I believe, that night. It's like, yeah, I get it. But those days are pretty much over. I mean, arguably the last time we had an Oscars year where we had a whole bunch of like really populous pictures was 3 years ago when you had, I'm going to bring up the list here again because it was like Bohemian Rhapsody, nearly $1 billion picture. Let's see, this was the 92nd? It was 92nd or 91st. We'll get to the 2019 year as well, but yeah. Start with that one. Start with Bohemian Rhapsody. Then you had Star is Born, a big box office hit. Green Book still made money. Black Panther was a huge, $1 billion plus movie. So there was a whole bunch going on there. In 2019, for films that made money, you had Joker over $1 billion. 1917 ended up with a pretty good cash flow there. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood made money. Now, obviously, again, these aren't like the Star Wars, the E.T.s. Some of these. At times, highest grossing films ever, kind of deals to get into Best Picture. Again, I think those days are a long ways off. So, yeah, I get it. I know a lot of people are like, well, I like the Oscars. I want them to continue. Therefore, they need ratings. And the only way to get ratings is to get films that everybody has seen in competitive categories like Best Picture, stuff that people, pay attention to and all that. And I get the argument, but I'm like, okay, well, at what point do we start, saying they're just going to shill to the biggest box office winners every year? That I don't get it, And I can see the argument, because I did like Spider-Man a lot. It was, I don't know if I haven't put a list together yet for, like, best of the year or whatever, but right now, if I'm looking at it, I don't know if it's top 5 of the year, but it's definitely in the conversation for, like, 6, 7, 8 in that range for me. it was a really enjoyable film and really great. It had really great moments in it. There's even a couple kind of emotional moments when we get closer to the second and third act that we don't always see in superhero films. Some of them, some of them lately we have. Like, Avengers Endgame did have a couple kind of choke you up moments. Arguably Infinity War at the end had that when everybody starts, turning to dust and everything, like the Spider-Man one. I don't want to go, I don't want to go. Like, the first time I saw that, I was like, even though I knew subconsciously that all these characters are coming back in the next film, it was like, just in the moment, yeah, it was really heartbreaking to see this poor, kid, this 16, 17-year-old kid, know he's gone. He's about to die. And all he can do is just try to hold on to his mentor for a little and stay here a little bit longer. It's like, okay, yeah, I can, in the moment, I got a little emotional. I didn't, start bawling or whatever, but I was like, wow. And, and obviously they picked, Tom Holland's a great actor, and that was, really good, kind of Batman and Robin type relationship there. Again, I still to see this become a major meme. So let's make this happen, guys. Say this was the best Batman and Robin ever, and you put a picture of Tony Stark and Iron Man and Spider-Man. I mean, yeah, think about it. It's true. That's the best Batman and Robin relationship we've seen on the big screen. It's true. Anyways, but yeah. Anyways. So it's like, okay, number one for why this didn't happen, it didn't have the trajectory. And that's really all where that conversation needs to end, is right after that. It's like, if these bigger films, like Black Panther, Get Out, arguably a few years ago, some of these films that are more pop cultural things like that, or if they're, Ford v. Ferrari, which made a little bit of money, or Joker, which made a lot of money, it's like they need to get on that path, and they need to do it sooner rather than later when we get into the Oscars conversation. With Spider-Man, it wasn't like it was released the first weekend in November, where some of these films like that sometimes could get a little bit more buzz to them and could take off. It was a late December release, obviously because of some of the elements in the film. They couldn't do early screenings in fears of a lot of stuff getting leaked and all that, and they wanted to save some of that stuff for the surprise for the opening weekend. So it's like, yeah, and especially with bigger movies like this, it becomes very difficult. Avengers Endgame, if that was like a November or December release, you couldn't have shown that back in September at Telluride or at TIFF. It doesn't work like that. It's, number one, it's not really always their movie, and number two, you're going to have everything spoiled within 2 seconds of that film's screening being, in progress or whatever. It's like, it's just not the way these things are set up. And that's obviously not to say that these films are not worthy of Best Picture nominations. It's not to say that these films, if they are nominated, it's because the Academy is shilling out. No. It just has to work. It just has to line up. And for Spider-Man, the stars were not aligned and everything there. So, and for the second argument there of like, oh, it should be nominated, to get popular stuff back in, I disagree with that stuff. Maybe it's just the way I've kind of grown up in the Oscar years here since, probably that when I first started paying attention to them was, I'm trying to think, like some of the first years I just sat down and like watched the show and stuff. Probably around the year of The Departed winning, the year before maybe Crash winning, maybe. Somewhere in there is when I think I would actually start watching the whole show, because I was like, 6, 7, 8 years old at the time. So obviously I hadn't seen any of the films. Maybe I'd heard of this one. Every once in a while you'll see a film you've seen like get nominated in like the tech categories or something. You're like, oh, I know that one. Like Spider-Man 2 won visual effects for in 2004 or whatever. And I was like, oh yeah, I've seen Spider-Man. And it's like, you get it. Anyways, but it's like, it's been a very big mentality with the Academy Awards to nominate the films and award the films that are more smaller, that are more indie. Sometimes they will go for more studio film, like The Departed, like Argo, stuff like that. But it's more, it kind of got into that era there in the 90s through the aughts and onward even, where it's like, okay, we do like those, but we like our smaller independent movies too, and we really wrap our arms around those and everything. So, so it's like, just growing up in that era with the Oscars in a way, it does make me say, look, you have your Spider-Mans, your Avengers, all these movies, the Batman potentially, which comes out here in a few weeks, they're going to have their box office gold, and nobody can touch that. I mean, obviously, films like Marriage Story, Jojo Rabbit, I don't know, stuff this year like Coda, Don't Look Up, which were obviously streaming movies and stuff. But it's like even something like Nightmare Alley or West Side Story, which didn't do much at the box office. Stuff like Drive My Car, which has been very slow at the box office, even in its limited run. It's just done okay. Belfast, okay, in its moderate to some semi-wide release. King Richard, didn't do that hot either. Licorice Pizza, it's done okay, not great. It's like, yeah, it's these films don't always get all that much attention, so I don't mind some of these films getting the edge in stuff like this where they get recognized. That doesn't always mean these films are better, superior, all that stuff. I don't go for that argument. I always say when it comes to these the films like Spider-Man, stuff like that getting nominated for picture, I'm always okay with it if it's something that kind of, as I think I've said this before, it transcends the genre a little bit, or it's just so above and beyond what we normally get in that genre that it feels like it's on the same playing field as some of these other kind of highbrow dramas or stuff like that. Like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I think feels like it's on that level. For me personally, Star Trek 2, if you go back to that one, I wouldn't have batted an eye if that had actually been nominated for, and that got totally skunked that year. But if that had been nominated, The Dark Knight feels like one of those for me. Yeah, I'm just trying to think what else recently here. Probably for Marvel stuff and everything of the latest stuff here, I mean, I get the argument for Avengers Endgame. I don't know if I personally would have put it in, but it's like, okay, I get that argument. Even from, I think Captain America Civil War even had, some of those more bigger argument kind of, big ideas kind of thing. It's like, though, yeah, that I can understand. I think maybe even a little bit more than stuff like Infinity War, Endgame, stuff like that, or even Spider-Man No Way Home, getting maybe some recognition and stuff like that. I still say, other than maybe the first Iron Man, I still think Robert Downey's best performance as Tony Stark is in Civil War. I mean, he actually does have a few really, really, really good scenes in that. Obviously, Endgame, he also gets some really, really nice, actual acting scenes and everything, where it's like, okay, you feel like somebody has entered the room who's who can legit, hang with some of these Oscar type roles and stuff. It's like that. I see that argument. Sure. Yeah, so I don't know if I have much to add there. It's just, for me personally, I don't know, even with the success of it and everything, I don't know if Spider-Man No Way Home broke that boundary for me where it's like, okay, it feels like a Dark Knight. It feels not just like it's a great movie that happens to be a comic book movie. This is a movie that feels like it has kind of broken through. Like, this is a film that is going to change comic book films. And despite how much I like the film, the box office success of it, the critical success of it, I don't think it's on that threshold for me personally. So I think that's also maybe something that some Oscar voters maybe keep in mind for stuff like that. And again, traditionally, we don't see a lot of these type films break in unless they have a lot of, general support. Mad Max Fury Road is probably the example everybody will go to with hey, that one did well. Or Dune, arguably, you could say this year. It's like, oh yeah, even though that one has 10 nominations without a fucking director nomination, which I'm still a little shaken up about. And I'm like, I kind of thought through my head, I'm like, okay, maybe Ragtime in 1981 got close to that number of nominations without director, or, well, in that case, not in picture either. But this one at least got picture. But I was like, in the modern age, I can't think of a film that got that many nominations but didn't land director. It did, got into literally every last tech category that it could, but couldn't handle Best Director. The director's branch just turned their backs on it. I don't know. The math just doesn't work on that one. Anyways, but where was I going? Oh, yeah. So like Mad Max, it's like, yeah, you saw that one get a bunch of tech nomination stuff. With Spider-Man, it's like, okay, where other than visual effects, which I was doubting the whole season, where else was that going to end up? Like, realistically, what category, not just in the top categories, but even in the tech categories, which one would it have made sense in? Was it a big cinematography achievement? Not really. Sound? Okay, sound I could see an argument for, but didn't make the list. Costume design? Well, the suits, okay, but, it's like, what about, Avengers and some of those movies that have a lot more suits and stuff? No, they don't make it. Score, I actually really did like the No Way Home score, so I would actually, I don't know, without having seen every last entry in that category there, I don't know if I would put it in over anybody else, but it's like, damn, you actually listen to that score. There's some really great moments in that score. Screenplay? No. I mean, it was well put together movie. I don't know if that means it's one of the best adapted screenplays of the year. Would you say it's a better script than Coda? I would not argue that. Would John Watts be somebody we're looking at in Best Director? Would he really have gotten in over not only Denis Villeneuve, but like the rest of the field there? Oh, I don't know. I don't know if he would even get in over like somebody like Spencer, the guy who directed Pablo Larraín, or Guillermo del Toro. Some of these directors that early on we thought maybe had a chance, but kind of faded away over time. Or Marcus Green for King Richard. Adam McKay even. It's like, yeah, it's just, if it's going to happen, you have to have more support as well. It's not just going to be picture, maybe one category like sound or visual effects, or maybe both, and that's, no. Even with 10 nominees, I just don't think that's going to happen. And again, I think the more people that talk about this in this way, again, I think you're going to risk the Academy doing the unthinkable and going back to a discussion they had 3 years ago that we all shat on immediately and said, "What the fuck are you doing, Academy?" with that popular film category bullshit. The more people keep spewing this up, the more everybody's going to be like, "Well, maybe we were wrong to take that away. Maybe people were." It's like, oh my god, I don't know. I don't know how to win with this stuff. With that argument for sure, but still, I think that's. I think we've said everything we've had to say about that one. We'll move on here. Okay, so director. So this is something after the BAFTA thing too. After I kind of really put pen to paper and figured out. Oh yeah, actually in the rules it says from now on, as long as they have this jury bullshit, which I'm still not really liking. We're gonna have 3 female directors, 3 male directors. And again, I'm going to make the same argument I did last time, right before we did the final nominations predictions, where I'm like, okay, well, how is that fair to each gender of director, or even if there's a non-binary director who gets popularity and gets into a race here or something? Because it's like, okay, what if you have a year, again, where you have like 7, 8, or 9 male directors, for example, at BAFTA, that are really deserving. They all did really great work. And yet 6 of them are going to get shut out because of the rule. On the flip side, if we have more female directors come in, and all of a sudden there's 5 or 6 or 7, or even 8 or 9, just make it fair, we'll say the same number, of female directors where it's like, oh, look at the work they did. That was a really personal film. Or look at all the tech stuff going on with that one. Look at all the visuals going on with this one, the visual effects. Look at all the work they had to do, all that stuff. Again, more than half of them going to get shut out. It's like, okay, well, that's fucking stupid. I really don't see that. And plus, again, on the opposite side, if we have a really weak year for, again, I'll make this, we're more likely to see this in a female, perspective and stuff. But it's like, okay, well, what if we have all these awesome female directors, and on the male director side, it's like, well, you have a guy, it would be, somebody who the popular sentiment is, well, they're kind of undeserving. They did an okay job directing their movie, but we're really going to put them over ... and you name off all the female directors. And again, the opposite. If we have a really weak field for female directors where it's like none of them really got, whatever their vision was for directing this film, it just didn't pan out. Like, nobody's getting behind any of these competitors this year or whatever. Boom. It's like, it's the same thing. It's like, well, how can you really say that somebody is one of the best in their field, one of the best directors of this year, when you're only judging, 3 people from each gender? And again, we're not even getting into, people who are non-binary and stuff. All that, is another discussion I think to be had. Because how the hell is that going to work if they want to work that into their rules and stuff? It's like, how can we say this is the actual best when we're really eliminating potentially 2 or 3 whole fields of other directors who could have made up the same category and eliminate everybody who is nominated, if that makes sense. In other words, if you have a batch of 6 directors that do get nominated, we could be potentially eliminating another 6 directors, possibly even 6 directors of the same gender that get eliminated, that are gone, that aren't even going to be considered because they didn't crack the popularity of it, or get saved by the jury. It's like, well, how can we really stand by that? And I don't know. I think that's a really big question that BAFTA has to answer. Whoever is in charge of that, all their boards and everything, I think they really have to give me a lot of solid examples of why their system is better than the Academies or the Directors Guild or the Critics' Choice or Golden Globes, which obviously a lot of people are better than Golden Globes in a lot of people's eyes. All that stuff. Yeah, I get it. But it's like, yeah, I'm just naming all the other stuff. But it's like, really, I want to really get some more stuff onto that. Just because I'm thinking of ways where it's like, okay, this is how you're going to be ridiculed out of the whole discussion of being, a really serious contender, especially in categories like that. I don't know. But somebody had brought up the idea, okay, well, it's like we've seen at some of these Critics' Prize and stuff, a Best Female Director and a Best Male Director category, and I don't know if that's just at the Oscars, or if that maybe they start that in the producers, I keep wanting to say a Critics' Choice, something like that. Just one of these other shows, Golden Globes or BAFTA or something. And my immediate reaction to that was, in a fair world, how a male and a female direct a movie is really not all that different, right? They all come in, some of them write the script, some of them do notes on the script, and they go to work. And it's like, really, my first argument was, a male and a female direct a movie the same way. They just direct the movie. How they do it, like as far as, how much soul, mind, all that stuff they put into it, obviously that differs from director to director, and you're not always going to get that, a male director, when they're doing their stuff with like a personal project like Kenneth Branagh's, which isn't really a big technical achievement. I'm just going to use this as an example here. Like something like Belfast. It's a movie that doesn't really have a lot of tech stuff going on. It's more of a personal story, smaller budget, smaller cast, in black and white. You're going to tell... I don't know. I just don't really see an argument where a female can go in and direct the same movie and have it come out almost the exact same versus a male director. How is that going to be different? I don't know. I just on a pure level like that. Now, as far as how the directing on the set goes and different styles there, okay, maybe that's where I see the argument of, okay, well, what about that? That makes sense. Because the way a female might direct, I don't know, an impassioned love scene, for example, might be a lot different than how a male director directs an impassioned love scene. You might have less female nudity from the female director. Not to play the stereotypes, but that could be how it plays. And the male's like, oh yeah, let's do full frontal. That's just for an example, just to really, again, play the stereotypes there. And everything there. But that's just an example there. So that was my immediate thought. But then I was like, well, wait a minute. Right now we have a Best Actress, Supporting Actress, and on the other flip side, you have a Best Actor and a Best Supporting Actor category. And it's like, really, that's the same argument for actors, though. Actors do the same work regardless of their gender, right? Just the way the directors do the same work regardless of their gender. They still direct the movie. Actors still act the part. So it's like, oh, okay. Well, that's why I get, and then I'm like, okay, well, I can't really think a way out of that argument immediately. That's like okay, that makes sense. Kind of makes sense still. Now, I will say, though, in defense of the whole thing of Best Actor, Best Actress, because I know even BAFTA came out afterwards, they're like, oh, we might just do just everybody in a couple categories, whatever. I'm like, okay, just like Gotham. Okay, see how that works. But yeah, just immediately I was like really dismissive of it. But I think part of the reason why I think we do have that and why it makes sense even in today's world is that the roles that a male plays in a leading role are going to be very different from the roles of a female lead. What their characters do, the amount of screen time they have, the amount of dialogue they have. Some of that stuff might bleed over and it might feel the same. But in many ways, it's different. How a female lead does in her film, in a drama, for example, might be 100% different than how a male lead is in their genre and in their film from their perspective. It's it's a really tough thing to say, okay, they're all equal in that way. So yeah, so that's where I'm like, okay, well, I don't really know if I have a definitive answer for should there be a female director category, should there be a male director category. On its ear, again, my immediate answer was no. They're all directing movies. It's like, yeah. In what way is a female director directing a movie differently than a male director, aside from personal styles, which doesn't always have to do immediately with gender? Like I was saying with the example of the passionate love scene, it's like, well, maybe a male director actually does want to show male frontal nudity in his. And again, I'm not playing stereotypes here, but maybe that's something only a female director would do in another world. But we could have a male director that does want to do that. He says, hey, I've seen enough topless women, bottomless women, whatever. Let's do that with the man, for example. And you could have a female director who's like, you know what? No, let's, I'm going to do this. We're going to show it all for the female. It could happen, It's like, you don't always have to play to that stereotype. So on that one, I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I have a definitive answer, because again, it's like, okay, well, if we have an all-gender director category, why don't we have an all-gender acting category? And on the flip side, if we have split directing categories there, then it would make sense to keep the acting categories separate, which they are right now. Director is not. So it's like, oh, I don't know. That's kind of a head-scratcher for me right now, because it's like, I get both sides of the argument for everything there. Again, though, I would say with the whole idea of female director, male director right now, again, if you're going to restrict it to that, is you're really going to potentially cut off a lot of great work there. And again, it's really about the whole idea of these categories are, again, it's the best of the field. Not, okay, these are some of the best of this gender, here's the best of the other gender. It's like, yeah, that, for me, that shouldn't... really is not going to encompass, I think 99 times out of 100, it's not going to encompass truly the best directors. The directors who took on the challenge and did the best they could with it, and the results speak for themselves. Stuff like that. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents on it. Now, do I have a definitive one? No, I don't really think I have a definitive answer here. That it's a discussion, I think, that is going to be ongoing for arguably the next few years. It might be a discussion that ends in the next couple of years if the Academy or BAFTA or some of these other award shows start, experimenting a little bit. We'll see. But for now, it's like, okay, I can see where we can be experimental and we can try it. On the other hand, it's like, okay, well, I think if we're going to do something there, we need to keep it consistent across the board. So if we want to keep an all directors category, all males and females there, then okay, then that should open the door to more people discussing that in the acting categories. Now, again, personally for me, on top of it being, okay, yeah, obviously everybody's got different roles based on, what category they end up in. On top of it, too, I'm like, I kind of like the idea of 2 guys and 2 girls winning. It's like, okay, then it's balanced, then it's fair. It's like they all have an equal shot in their respective field. They get compared only against people of their same gender, arguably all with the same relative amount of screen time or same level of presence in their film, whether they're a supporting performance or a leading performance. And I think that's a really good way, obviously, when we compare art, there's no real objective way to do it. It's all subjective. But I think the way they've got it set right now, it makes sense for why they're doing it and how they're doing it. So I'd be a little... I don't think I'd be a little. I'd be very hesitant right now if everything just switched on a dime and we're like, we're going to go ahead and just say all the 20 acting categories, all the 20 nominees, I should say, they're all just going to be thrown in and it's just going to be a free-for-all. Then it's like, okay, so we're going to have just one acting winner every year? That doesn't make sense. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe, and yeah, maybe spreading the wealth in that way where we do have 4 acting winners instead of 2 or even 1. Yeah, I kind of like that idea too, because it does showcase, I think, more performers in that way. All right, let's see, let's get out of that one. Anyways, so in the Best Picture category, one other quick thing with that. Obviously, I think, I don't know if I want to say 90%, but definitely a lot of people, probably majority of people right now, think Power of the Dog. That's the one to beat, right? I mean, that's the one, it overperformed, it didn't miss anything, it got stuff we weren't expecting. It seems to have every last bullet point that you need to win Best Picture. Obviously, you got to have that nomination. Director nomination, very key. Writing nomination, extremely key. Editing nomination, very again by the stats, very, very key. And then it's also an acting nomination. Usually really, really, really helps you. Again, there's an example of every last one of these categories other than Best Picture, obviously. But for the other 4 categories there, director, acting, screenplay, and a tech category, again, preferably film editing would be the one to go to. That's probably the key one there. There's examples of each of those categories where you're missing something, but a film can still win. I don't think we need to go into all the examples because you can, it's very easy to see. Anyhow, so it didn't really dawn on me until the last couple of days. But I looked at it and I'm like, okay, well, obviously, one big factor, even though I do have Power of the Dog ahead right now, I have it as the front runner to win. It's Netflix. And it's weird because even in a widely pandemic year, almost all of 2020, especially here in the US, it was a pandemic. If they were going to go for a streaming movie from Netflix or from Amazon or from Apple or any of these other sites like that, that was going to be the year to do it. But they went with a film that was largely distributed in the theaters and then eventually was seen a little more widely once it did come to streaming in Nomadland. So it's just weird to me that the year after films like Spider-Man recover the box office. No Time to Die made a lot of money. F9 made a lot of money worldwide. Stuff like that. When some of these movies, obviously the last one didn't get anything, but the other two movies still had some representation at the Oscars at least. They're respected films, critically okay films at worst. With No Time to Die, there was definitely some critics on that one, but still. It would just be weird to have that turnaround where we're like, okay, now we're going to go with a streaming film. Now we're going to go with Netflix winning their first prize. And it's arguable, that it's been 6-7 years since they really entered the discussion with probably Beasts of No Nation was kind of their first largely considered serious contender, and that one really struggled. It had some high points during the season, but then it ended up with no nominations. And Netflix, they broke through, later on with stuff, but they've really struggled with that picture category, getting a win there. And I still think to this day, there's still some people that are going to be like, oh, I liked it. I don't know if I liked it that much. And how much of that is the Netflix factor? It's going to be interesting to see. So that was one thing. The other thing too was I thought of two recent examples of movies that overperformed Oscars morning. And both of them were at one point considered frontrunners and ended up losing. And again, both of these are within the last 6 years. So let's start with The Revenant, also a Western. Obviously, picture and director felt really good, but it got a surprise acting nomination that year with Tom Hardy, who was very spotty in the season. Really, the only thing it missed was screenplay. Otherwise, it overperformed in the tech categories, got into costume design, which really not a lot of people picked. And stuff like that. The visual effects category, I think some people were a little shakier on, I think, that year too. And after the DGA win, everybody's like, oh, okay. And then it won, the BAFTA as well. So it kind of became frontrunner that year. Ended up losing the spotlight. And then let's also look in 2018 at Roma, also a Netflix film. But also like Roma, or like Power of the Dog, overperformed on Oscars morning. Got a surprise acting nomination with... I can't remember her name. Marina de Tavira. I got there. Arguably overperformed in one or two of the tech categories. Like production design, I don't think was a sure bet that year. I know it did get a couple things, and I probably should have put it in. And in retrospect, yeah, it made a lot of sense. But yeah, got in. I'm trying to think, what was the other one? I thought that was one other example there. The sound categories, right? I think I got into the sound categories, if I remember right. Yeah, I think it did. And that one, I don't think anybody was really, really high hopes on that one. And look at this year, Power of the Dog kind of gets, even though I predicted, Jesse Plemons, he was kind of a wild card there to get in at the end of it for supporting actor there. This one also got into production design, which not a lot of people predicted. The sound category, which I definitely was not very high on that one, again, unless it got into sweep factor, and it did with the number of nominations and stuff. So, is this another case of that? I don't know, but that's definitely something to point out. And I think what we saw with those two, especially with The Revenant, is that one kind of had some burnout. I think after the film kind of came out and it started winning a couple things, I think that's when people were like, oh, well, I kind of, there were some people that were a little shakier on that one. And I think with Roma, not only was it a Netflix factor, but it was also it's in black and white, and it's in Spanish, and it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and the entertainment value in it is a little spottier. There's some sections, I still say, kind of the middle section of that movie still kind of lags when you compare it to the ending and to the beginning. With Power of the Dog, I've just seen it once. I do want to see it again before we get too far into the season to see how it holds up. But yeah, I liked it a lot, and I think the acting is really great in it, especially with Cumberbatch and Kirsten Dunst. I think Jane Campion is a worthy winner and director. I think she did a really great job directing the film. I think from a screenplay perspective, there's definitely some really great moments in there, some good lines and stuff, and a good general story as well. But again, it's kind of a quieter Western. There's not a lot of shootouts. There's not a lot of, there's a couple things here and there where there's a couple like kind of moments where they're moving cattle and stuff, but it's like it's not really all that. There's a couple of those wide vista kind of shots and stuff here and there where I was like, okay, well that feels good for cinematography, even though I ended up dumping it later. So I'm like, okay, that stuff. But again, I think there's going to be some people who are going to look at that one and they're just going to say, oh, after a while it got boring. It was a boring Western. And all that. It's like, oh, we got Jesse Plemons at the beginning, and then he kind of disappears for a long section of the movie, and it's like, oh, we kind of forgot he was in it. It's like, I don't know. I just think there's going to be enough voters there where it's like, okay, I think it's in a vulnerable spot. It kind of in the same way that Nomadland last year I felt before we got late into the season. I was like, it feels like it's got some vulnerable stuff there where it's like, okay, I can understand where some people are just going to rank this kind of lower on their preferential ballot. They're like, look, it's kind of overhyped, it's overrated, I got to it late, it got boring for me. I can see that argument with Roma. Definitely we saw the argument a little bit with Nomadland last year, and I can see people making that same argument with Power of the Dog. Again, even though all those films, with the exception of Nomadland, led nominations, tied for most nominations, or were up there as far as number of nominations. So, So then the argument becomes, okay, well, if people are kind of bored with that one, or if they just aren't quite on board with it, like everybody thinks, who's going to beat it? Who has, a lot of stuff or enough stuff like Green Book to upset and win? Or Moonlight upsetting La La Land. Spotlight upsetting The Revenant. Which one is going to do it? And I think everybody, for all year, if you weren't predicting Belfast, you definitely thought it was a number 2 or number 3. I haven't heard a lot of people be really, really detracting on that one. And I think with Belfast, obviously the number one problem, I think, is its lack of nominations, not only in editing, but cinematography as well. Those two should have been slam dunks for this movie. Even though, again, I can see the argument, because, film editing, you can see the argument where there's some more passion votes there, like King Richard, Don't Look Up, Tick, Tick, Boom, that kind of probably got some more passion votes in there than some of those other films. Or cinematography, okay, there were passion votes among Tragedy of Macbeth and Nightmare Alley to get those films in there. The fact that not all the kind of steak eaters and those tech categories and stuff, that they're not 100% on board with Belfast and just putting it in, even though Belfast does have the sound category and it does have the song category, so it's not like it got totally skunked in the tech categories. And it did miss in supporting actress for the one we thought would get in with Catriona Belfast, who felt, she was the only one, I think, besides Ariana DeBose, who got in everywhere. Everybody else was missing something. So, and even though, it does have support there with Judi Dench's nomination, I really look at that as kind of more of a token nomination, like, oh, they just wrote in Judi Dench. Or they were more familiar with Judi Dench, therefore they nominated her over Catriona. Anyways, but, And I think on top of it, again, you have to look at, okay, well, what else can it win? With Power of the Dog, okay, it looks really good for director. I won't even say it looks real good. It's almost a lock for director. I would say 99% chance. Adapted screenplay, again, we're in the 90s for percentage of that one winning. Even right now in supporting actor, I've got Kodi Smit-McPhee ahead. I will get to that one because I've been kind of making a little bit of an argument here in the last few videos. Troy Kotsur, I think, is really primed to take him down, especially when we get to SAG. And we'll get to that argument here in a little bit. But otherwise, it looks really good for an acting win. So it's like these are some of the elements that you need for winning Best Picture. Is where else are you going to win? And with Belfast, it's like, okay, right now it's not really feeling like a frontrunner in any one single category. Original screenplay, it's close, but Licorice Pizza seems to have the edge. Director, probably not going to happen. Any of the supporting races, probably not going to happen. Song, probably not going to happen. Sound, probably not going to happen. So it's like, okay, it really limits you. That's very much like a Spotlight, where it's like, okay, it can take screenplay and picture, and that's it. Let's see here. Otherwise, I think some people are talking about maybe King Richard as well, because King Richard, okay, it didn't get director, but it got screenplay, it got editing, and that editing category and that nomination is really key. But again, I look at it and it's like, okay, well, Will Smith seems really good right now for Best Actor. Again, we'll get a little discussion into that one here in a minute. But where else is it going to win other than, again, maybe the song category? Because is it going to upset everybody and take screenplay? I don't think so. Is Aunjanue Ellis, I think it's, I've heard both, but I think it's Aunjanue Ellis, is she going to upset everybody and take supporting actress? I really doubt it. In editing, is it going to trance Dune, Power of the Dog, Don't Look Up? That's really tough. I really don't think it can. So, I don't know. So it's like, okay, now we're getting into the discussion last year where it's like, okay, it's like the big thing I went through last year where I was kind of on the fence of, okay, is Nomadland really primed to be upset? And I looked at it and I was like, no, because I didn't see enough passion amongst the other nominees last year. I remember I kind of went through them. I don't know if I did it on camera or not. I kind of went through them one by one. I'm like, well, that's why that one can't do it. That's why that one doesn't have enough passion. That's why that one doesn't. And if we do it again this year, it's like Belfast. Okay, well, where else is it going to win? It doesn't have a really secure spot. And is it going to be, because some people were making the argument last year that Trial of Chicago 7 would win Best Picture and take nothing else. Belfast, is it going to do that? I don't think so. If Trial of Chicago 7 couldn't do it with an editing nomination, I don't see how Belfast does it. Let's see, for the other ones here. Dune, even though, it's going to have a lot of those tech wins, without director, wow, that's a real stretch. That's a real stretch for that one to win. Because, other than maybe, I don't know, Grand Hotel, what else was missing not only director, but acting nominations and still won Best Picture? Crickets on that one. I can't remember any that did that. Let's see here. Yeah, we mentioned King Richard. Again, it's like, where's it going to win? I don't know. Coda, well, it could win an acting prize, but we don't see that too often, do we? Taking an acting prize only alongside picture. Now, again, we'll get to like Green Book, Moonlight, some of these that take picture, screenplay, and an acting prize. That can happen. The Godfather did that as well. So it's like, okay, we've seen that argument before. Rain Man did that as well. That one did have a director. Okay, yeah, that had 4 wins. That's right. I'm just thinking of historical examples there. Did Driving Miss Daisy only have the 3? No, that one had more than 3 wins. That's right. Yeah, but still, it's like, okay, and then what about West Side Story? Well, West Side Story, yeah, it feels like, okay, it's got the director nomination, it's got very likely an acting win, but it still has the nomination there. But it missed screenplay and it missed editing, so it's like, oh, that's a really hard combo to beat. On there. Stuff like Drive My Car. Well, we just saw Parasite win. Why can't that one win? Yeah, it's got director, it's got the writing nomination, but it didn't get any acting. It's not in editing. Yeah, it's like, is that one really a passion vote for everybody the same way that Parasite was? I'm not hearing that argument. It's like, I'm trying to think even what else, Licorice Pizza. Okay, well, that's only got stuff for Paul Thomas Anderson. It couldn't get into editing, couldn't get into acting. Nothing from those, so it's like, oof, I don't know. So, yeah, I don't know. So, just on that very basis, that's why I'm like, okay, I'm really struggling to see Power of the Dog losing, even if it does lose some support, and some people on their ballots really start marking it down further and further, I really don't see where it just absolutely collapses the whole house of cards and it loses at the end. I think, because again, you need something that has that passion. Something like Moonlight winning over La La Land. That was like a very passionate thing, and it had a couple of key wins. A couple of very key wins that looked really good going into Oscars night, regardless of how it was going to do in Best Picture or some of the other categories. Mahershala Ali felt like a really good bet for supporting actor, even though I think Dev Patel did win BAFTA. And then the Screenplay prize, even though it was kind of all over the roadmap that year because of the adapted versus original stuff, even in the original screenplay category, it was still winning a couple of those over Manchester by the Sea and over La La Land and over a couple of the other contenders. So it was like in the adapted category, it felt really good. It felt like, yeah, that might be the only spot it wins, but it's going to win there. It looks like it, at least. So, and then with Spotlight, it was like kind of a passion one with that one too, where it's like, okay, that one felt like even even though it was going to probably lose the acting races and stuff, screenplay felt really good for that one. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really early on getting a sense of that right now. Now, once we get Directors Guild, Producers Guild, BAFTA, some of these some of these shows out of the way, if we see a big turn, like we saw the Birdman year, where we see the Directors Guild, Writers Guild, the major trifecta there. I can't remember if what's really the trifecta is SAG, Producers Guild, Directors Guild. All three of them lined up for Birdman that year. So it's like, okay, once we see a turn like that, if we see something like that, okay, then we've got a shot here. And it's like, really, the only ones that have all three, I believe, are... is the only one Belfast, actually, now that I think about it? Because, yeah, Coda doesn't have DGA, even though that's a SAG nominee. King Richard doesn't have DGA, even though that's a SAG nominee. Let's see, Dune does not have... it doesn't have a SAG nomination. Don't Look Up doesn't have a Directors Guild nomination. Really, the only one that has all of them is Belfast. Now that I think about it, because I was looking through, I thought I had one more, but no. Really, the only one that can do that is Belfast, because Power of the Dog missed for Ensemble, so we know something else is going to win there if Power of the Dog is still going to win Best Picture. So it's like, oh, okay. So when we come to that Triple Crown kind of winner there, is Kenneth Branagh really going to win over Jane Campion at Directors Guild? I'm shaking my head at that. Even though, for me personally, I think my vote would be right now for Belfast, having not seen really the other three directors. Still have to catch up with West Side Story, still have to catch up with Licorice Pizza, and Drive My Car I can't find anywhere. So, yeah. And that one, it's 3 hours, too, so I kind of have to, even though, yeah, I get it. I talk about how some movies, yeah, I do like them when they're longer, like Irishman and stuff, Dune, stuff like that, I get it. So with that one, even though it's, all that stuff, I'm like, I feel like I have to kind of mentally prepare for that one. Just because I know it's not going to be a slam bam, big directorial thing there. It's going to be more quiet film and everything. Anyways, so that's my argument for, okay, I really don't know where that turn is going to happen and where something else is going to really start to take over. So, yeah. Anyways, let's move on here to the actress race, because this one is kind of starting to feel like last year's Best Actress race, where it's like it's all over the roadmap. You had some contenders missing at key ceremonies, some that felt like, okay, they're getting everything, and then they come up short, like Lady Gaga, especially this year. And then you have one who gets thrown in there like Penelope Cruz, who missed everything but still came back to be nominated. And really, in this case, I think the only one we can outright dismiss again here is probably Penelope Cruz. Even though, yeah, I think obviously the number one reason for that is just because this is her only nomination. But I think for the other four, there's at least a mild shot that any one of the four could win. And I'm just really quick, we'll size this up here. So I think we'll kind of eliminate from least likely to most likely. The two I have up top, I think, are the ones that are going to end up duking this out. I'm not totally dismissing the other two, but the other two I'm seeing a little bit like, okay, the argument's a little shakier on. So we'll start. Kristen Stewart, I think, though, is the next weakest link besides Penelope Cruz here, obviously because she missed SAG and she missed BAFTA. The BAFTA one kind of makes sense in retrospect because the British Academy is always very, very reluctant if they're going to vote for something that really doesn't uphold, Britain in a really good light. I always go back to, like, Imitation Game got crushed by stuff like Theory of Everything that year, two kind of big British productions. Even though Imitation Game got a lot of nominations, it just really struggled over there. I don't think it won anything at BAFTA that year. Because it ended up kind of being a really critical thing of The Crown, where it's like, oh, well, look what you did with homosexuals back in the day. Yeah, not good. So it's like BAFTA's like, oh, well, that's embarrassing. I'm not going to vote for that. So versus A Theory of Everything. It's a much lighter. Oh, Stephen Hawking's great, and yeah, we all know Stephen Hawking's great. So yeah, I'm more comfortable voting for that one. Anyhow, but I think with Kristen Stewart though, the thing that I think still keeps her in the conversation is that she was our frontrunner for so long, kind of early in the race and stuff. And I think the fact that it still got in after all the difficulty, that still shows that people saw the film. The actors, especially, they saw the film. So that means that enough of them were passionate about it that they put her in over Lady Gaga, who was a big campaigner in a movie that made a lot more money, had a lot more spotlight on it, looked a lot better in some of the other categories. But that ended up kind of being like Rocket Man. Remember that a couple of years ago where it's like, oh, it looked really good in actor, a couple of the other categories, and it just ended up with the song. Just like with House of Gucci, it's like, oh, it looked really good in actress. Supporting actor we thought was probably Jared Leto, probably getting at least a nomination. I don't know if he was going to win, but he was definitely in the running there. And it just ended up with makeup. Couldn't even get into the costume category. So just on that basis, I'm like, okay, maybe in a really weird split year, maybe she does end up winning. But I think that's the first one of the 4 kind of serious contenders. I think she's the first one to eliminate. I think some people are going to be mad at me for this. I think Olivia Colman's the next one. Now, I think one big argument that I think is supporting Olivia Colman is the fact that Jessie Buckley got into supporting actress. That shows that not only were people watching the film, but they understood it. They understood, because it's like part of what makes Olivia Colman's performance so good is the Jessie Buckley performance. Is you see how a younger actress playing the character at a younger age, you see how that affects the older actor's performance and stuff. So that makes sense. So it's like, ooh, okay. Plus, I mean, and The Lost Daughter, I think the only way it could have performed better on Oscars morning, if it did end up somehow getting a director nomination or a picture nomination, picture being maybe a little bit more likely. But that would have been about the only other way that I could see that one getting more support. Because I really don't know what else that would have gotten nominated for. But the fact that Jessie Buckley did get in shows not only are they watching it, they get it, and they understand how that performance really was part of what makes Olivia's performance so good. And even though in my eyes, I think it's the other way around. I think Jessie Buckley's or Olivia's performance is great, but it really highlights when you have Jessie Buckley there too, because it's like, yeah, I still say miles ahead. She was the performance from that film that really stood out to me. Anyways, the biggest thing though I think that's going to cut against Olivia there is the fact that she did just win a few years ago in an upset for The Favorite. Now, I get it. She's in that kind of honeymoon period like Frances McDormand was last year, where she had just won a few years prior for 3 Billboards. But it's like some of those like Sally Field or Tom Hanks, or if you go back to Spencer Tracy, some of these ones that win, within a few years. What's the other one? Christoph Waltz. Let me think. There was one other big example, and I can't remember who it was now. Sally Field, yeah, we mentioned her. Gosh, I know there's another example. Mahershala Ali, yeah. I thought there was an older example, though, I was going to go to. Kevin Spacey, I think, was the one. Yeah, he won 2 Oscars within 5 years. And I think there's even another one. But yeah, it's like we're kind of seeing these pop up. There's these examples do pop up. So it's like, okay, that one, it would make sense. Now, I think the problem, though, and obviously this cuts against everybody because none of these 5 actresses are in a Best Picture nominee. It really is kind of a thing where it's like, okay, is the popularity of the film going to be enough to carry it over? Because Frances was in the Best Picture winner last year when we had such a divided race. Nobody is going to have that in their corner this year. So that's really going to be a struggle there. Plus, on top of it, The Lost Daughter, and I think we're going to make the same argument here in a minute for being the Ricardos. What else is that film going to win? Supporting actress? No. Adapted screenplay? Very unlikely. For being the Ricardos, is Javier going to upset everybody in Best Actor? No. Is J.K. Simmons going to upset everybody in Supporting Actor? I doubt it. So it's like, okay, this kind of becomes the category for this film in that way. So I think in that way too, I think The Lost Daughter, even though it doesn't have, it has a little prestige with the screenplay nomination, I don't know if that's enough for me to say, okay, that's what makes Olivia win. And then on top of it too, it's a more subdued performance. True, and it's true. Yeah, Frances' performance last year kind of, in some ways, felt that way. He had some more over-the-top work from some of the other actresses there, like Vanessa Kirby with Viola Davis. A little bit with Carey Mulligan as well. Andra Day looked like she had some of those kind of bigger moments too. I still have to catch up with that one. Maybe someday I'll watch that one. But anyways. with Olivia, okay, she gets kind of one kind of shouting scene. She gets a couple kind of emotional scenes here and there. But again, it's a very quieter, more, thinking performance, kind of deal. And again, sometimes that's the harder performance to pull off. I get that. In this case, though, sometimes I'm not even going to say sometimes, it's becoming less and less common for those performances to win. Like last year, the big argument I had, Paul Raci, I think, probably would have had my vote last year in supporting actor, versus Daniel Kaluuya, who has a lot of shouting scenes and a lot of big kind of sermon type moments, obviously, as it would make sense with his character in Judas and the Black Messiah. So it's like, so it's like, okay, I get, so it's like, that's probably a key example of sometimes it's the biggest performance, the loudest performance that can sometimes help you. And obviously that's not cutting against Daniel Kaluuya at all. I think he was really great in that film. But just for me, sometimes it's the quieter side. I always go back, like Bruce Dern, I think maybe arguably that was a tough year for Nebraska for Best Actor. But I think he was probably my favorite that year, just because he had some of those quieter moments that just really stuck out to me. And true, Leonardo DiCaprio's wild and crazy and running around and all that in Wolf of Wall Street, and it's really entertaining. Matthew McConaughey's got the big transformative stuff, all everything there and everything. Yeah, okay, I get it. And obviously, yeah, I think he was probably in second place for me though. Who else that year? All that stuff. Olivia's, again, is kind of in that crowd where it's like it's a quieter performance. And as of late, those have been kind of struggling to win. So that's another reason why I would kind of put her a little lower on the list. So I think this really does come down to a battle between Nicole Kidman and Jessica Chastain. And I think, in retrospect, part of the reason why I have Jessica Chastain ahead right now, being the Ricardos arguably underperformed on Oscars morning. Because I think in many ways they were looking, maybe not 100%, but they were looking okay for a picture nomination. And they were looking really good for a screenplay nomination. And again, even though I was arguing it early and I didn't listen to my own argument, and I, all that stuff with screenplay and with Aaron Sorkin, and again, they almost always miss out he almost always misses out on that category. Social Network is the exception. Last year, Trial of Chicago 7 is the exception, and Molly's Game, because it was such a weak field that year, that was an exception. But every other time, whether it's A Few Good Men or Steve Jobs, one or two other examples in there that I'm forgetting about, is it American President or My Fellow Americans? I always get those two confused. They came out around the same time. But that one, I think that one ended up getting totally skunked at the Oscars, aside from like a score nomination or something, back when they split it between comedy, musical, and drama scores. But for being the Ricardos, I really thought that one was on track to do well. And even though it did get J.K. Simmons in, which is a sign, again, that they liked the movie, they were watching the movie, and it is the actor's branch. It makes sense. And Nicole Kidman, though, I think, also, she's somebody, again, I kind of started talking about it after she won the Globe. I was like, well, she's kind of, almost feels like she's due for that second win, doesn't she? It's been a while since she got that first win, and it feels like it's been a while. So it would make sense in this kind of bigger role, at times kind of a little bombastic. At times it does feel like she's kind of doing a little transformative stuff to look like Lucille Ball and act like Lucille Ball, a version of her at least. It makes sense. It really does make sense. So I think part of the reason I'm going with Jessica Chastain, though, is Eyes of Tammy Faye. It wasn't really expected to be a picture contender. Director wasn't going to happen. Screenplay wasn't going to happen. Makeup was the key nomination that it was going to need, and it got it. And I think it's going to win that category. And it is a transformative performance. Chastain, literally, at times, it's like, oh, it doesn't really always look like her. Sometimes it doesn't sound like her. And I really looked at this, too. This is going to be a big thing, I think, if we're in line with that whole idea of the repeat winners not getting their next Oscar this year, Olivia Colman and Nicole Kidman. Jessica Chastain has not won yet. Penelope Cruz has won. Kristen Stewart, this is her first nomination, but I think she's the first one to eliminate there. Chastain, though, this is nomination number 3 for her, if I'm counting right. Zero Dark 30 and The Help. And arguably, almost every year since Zero Dark 30, she's had a role or a film that has gotten either some attention for her performance, whether it's Most Violent Year or Eleanor Rigby or what was the other? There's one other key one I'm forgetting about right now. Oh, Molly's Game. Yep. Miss Sloane. Some of these films where it's like, it felt like she was on track. Maybe in another year she would get in, but not this time, kind of deal. And she's kind of been in that way there, kind of that bride, always a bridesmaid, never a bride type deal. So I think an argument like that could really propel her in this race and put her out front. And I think, yeah, again, it kind of lines up with the idea of like Iron Lady. What's the other big one where the makeup wins and then the acting wins? Shoot, what's the other example there? Oh, good Lord, I can't think of it. It might come to me later. But I was going to say The Queen, but I don't think that one. Not that one. Because Iron Lady. Anyways, but yeah, it's like that one. That's a big argument. I even thought that was going to happen last year with Viola Davis with her win, but that didn't come through. So yeah, it's really does feel like, okay, we're really going to see what these other races do, like Critics' Choice, who wins there. Okay, when we get to SAG, who wins there especially? That's going to be really, really key. And it might just be a case, because a lot of some years lately, we've been like, okay, just go with the BAFTA winner, and sometimes it works out. Like Tilda Swinton, in that crazy year in supporting actress, she won BAFTA, ended up winning the Oscar. Last year with Frances, won the BAFTA, went on to win the Oscar. SAG feels like it's going to be that this year, because it's like, okay, at BAFTA, nobody carries over. Nobody. None of these 5 are nominated. So it's kind of whoever wins at BAFTA kind of doesn't count. So whoever wins at SAG, they have to be very, very crucial. If they get up on stage and they accept their award, they have to say something that is going to stick in the mind of the voters. They got to make, if we're just judging it on acceptance pages and stuff, they really got to make a mark, because that's going to be their last chance on a major televised show that they're going to be able to speak to the voters en masse, not person to person and stuff, which I'm sure they're all doing at the time at this time and stuff. But yeah, that's going to be really key. And if it's a surprise winner, if it's an upset winner, okay, then it makes it even crazier. So we'll see. We'll really see. Because if it's like, okay, if Critics' Choice, for example, let's say they're really on board with Lost Daughters, so they give it to Olivia Colman. Then we get to SAG, which Olivia's never won an individual prize at, but they go with Jessica Chastain. Okay, now we've got a really split field. I don't know. So, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we do in that case. I would say, again, depending on the thing, I would say probably Chastain then. But if it's like Nicole Kidman repeats across all 3, between Globes, Critics' Choice, and SAG, okay, then that looks pretty good. If it's Coleman who wins the other 2, that makes it interesting. Yeah, I don't know. That's going to be weird, because I think if Coleman does win the other 2, then okay, it makes sense why she would win the Oscar. It would make sense. And again, I see the arguments for and against kind of, doing all that stuff. So, I don't know. I remember a few years back I did make a part of a video where I went pro, con. I think it was in a director's race or something that year. Or a DGA or something. I was trying to figure out who would win. And I ended up getting it right with Inarritu. But this is again like last year. This is going to be exciting. It's going to be a nail biter. It's going to be like again like last year. It's like, oh, I should have had it. Some of these type winners here. All right. Let's see. I think this is going on a little longer than I thought it would. I think this is good discussion though, guys. I don't know. I'm enjoying this. I'm really enjoying this. I don't know if you guys are or not, but I'm getting a kick out of this. So we'll keep going here. And it's really just a supporting actor and lead actor. And I think these are a little bit more quieter, maybe not quieter, but definitely less elaborating in these discussions here. So in Best Actor, it feels like it's Will Smith's to lose, right? Well, what happens when we get to BAFTA? Because in all likelihood, Benedict Cumberbatch is going to win there. Is this going to be a moment, like we saw last year, where the BAFTA winner comeback happens, and we see Anthony Hopkins, like last year, carried over, even when in that case, Chadwick Boseman won everything else? If Will Smith wins everything, we get to BAFTA, and then it's Benedict Cumberbatch, does that change everything? I would say, actually, I think I've got Cumberbatch in second. I think there is actually a chance that could happen. And here's why. If Will Smith wins everything, then we get to BAFTA, And BAFTA goes all in on Power of the Dog. It wins picture, it wins director, it wins supporting actor, it wins actor, it wins screenplay. They really go for it in a lot of these categories. Then it's like, okay, well, look at all the voters. If they follow over like sheep, like they do some years with BAFTA, they did last year. All 8 of the top categories matched up. Then okay, Power of the Dog feels like it's our best picture frontrunner. So picture, director, a lead actor, possibly a supporting actor, screenplay, gets to 5 wins. And that's the other thing I didn't really talk about there with picture, is I thought about, I'm like, could this be Power of the Dog if it does really well on Oscars night? Could this be our first Best Picture winner since The Artist, if I'm remembering correctly, to win 5 Academy Awards? Because since then, Argo has won 3. I'm just going to do the numbers right now. Argo won 3, 12 Years a Slave won 3. That's another one that won picture, actor, an acting brace, and screenplay. Let's see here. Birdman won 4. Spotlight just won the 2. Moonlight won 3. Green Book won 3. Shape of Water won 4. And then Parasite won 4. And last year, Nomadland only won 3. So yeah, this would be the first one since The Artist. It'd be literally 10 years since we had a film win that many Academy Awards. And again, I'm still saying the sweep days are really behind us. I really don't see Power of the Dog upsetting in some of these tech categories and going on to win 6, 7, 8 like some of these other films do, like Slumdog Millionaire or Forrest Gump, which won a little bit of the higher categories and then some of the techs. Obviously, Lord of the Rings or Ben-Hur, Titanic, some of these other ones. Or even West Side Story, the original, won kind of a good mixture of both. Titanic less so. That was more almost all tech, and then it just won picture director. But and obviously Lord of the Rings, we knew that didn't win any acting and stuff. But yeah, with this, I don't know. I mean, that would make sense. Otherwise, for Power of the Dog to get to 5, if it wins supporting actor, director, screenplay, picture. Okay, it really only needs one upset win somewhere else to get to 5, right? It needs to win the editing category, or it surprises us and wins cinematography, or somehow wins in the score. I think score it could be in striking distance for. Yeah, that one would make sense. So, yeah, and that's without Benedict Cumberbatch. So that's going to be really interesting. Now, obviously, it has to follow through. Cumberbatch has to win BAFTA. And if Will Smith doesn't just go on full kind of sweep mode, like I thought Glenn Close would do, even though she went on to lose BAFTA. Okay, we'll see. If he wins at BAFTA, then I think we all know that at that point it's over. It's Will Smith, and it's 100% going to happen. But yeah, I think there's a chance that Will Smith continues. He wins at Critics' Choice. He does win at SAG. But then we get to BAFTA, then he struggles, because King Richard didn't do so hot over there. Well, I mean, maybe in like the picture category, for example. It did get Ingenue Ellis, it did get screenplay over there, so it did have maybe a little bit of support over there. Maybe a slightly more than we were expecting. But with that one, I just kind of have to wait and see what happens there. And as far as the other 3... I really think Andrew Garfield, which some people thought actually he might be an upset winner over Will Smith and Benedict Cumberbatch to take the Oscar. I really think if that was going to happen, I think he would have got... If Tick, Tick, Boom had gotten the picture nomination, then I can see the argument. But the fact that it really struggled in not only that category, but like screenplay, couldn't get into that. And obviously it was kind of a tough go from the beginning there. But like... what was the other one I was going to... sound, the sound category, it couldn't get in there, It did get the editing nomination, which is pretty big, but yeah, I don't know. I think it needed a little bit more support for him to be fully back in the discussion. If he surprises us and comes back and wins SAG or something, okay, then it's kind of that's a very interesting discussion point that opens up then, but personally, I don't see it happening. So I think with that one, is it a sure thing for Cumberbatch to come back and win? No, I'm not going to say it's set in stone, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to 100% see what BAFTA does, and then we'll go from there. But I don't know. So yeah, at this point, I'm not going to say it's 100% Will Smith's under lock and key. So just to kind of make that argument. And then I think the other one, I've made this before, so I'll just reiterate it really quick. Troy Kotsur for Coda. it feels like if anybody's going to take down Kodi Smit-McPhee, who's kind of so far in kind of like a, I don't know, just rough comparison, kind of a cakewalk. He's been winning a lot of these supporting acting races at critics groups and stuff, and won the Globe and everything. If Troy's going to upset, I think, obviously, SAG is going to be the key place there. And again, I've made this argument before, so I'll just reiterate it really quick. At SAG, you do have Power of the Dog missing that ensemble nomination. Something like Coda, which only has that one and Troy, that's a place where Troy can win and get on stage and really make a big impression on the voters there. And then he is nominated at BAFTA. So even though Power of the Dog probably is going to do better over there than Coda, almost 100%, yeah, that's still something where I'm like, okay. And on top of that, too, even if Troy doesn't win in the supporting acting race, there is a chance, I think, that Coda can win in the ensemble category. I think Belfast is probably your front runner, but I think right now I'm like, Coda is probably second there. I don't see King Richard coming back to win there. I don't see Don't Look Up winning there. And House of Gucci, I think, really drops, even though it does have the most ties for the most nominations. I don't see those two, that one coming back to win. So, yeah, so that's really going to depend there. And we could see a thing, again, where if BAFTA carries over and they, kind of like Yuya Jun last year, where they kind of followed suit with SAG, okay, then it would make sense for that to happen. But, SAG has to kind of make that move first. If they just go with that one with Power of the Dog, because I think otherwise, because Power of the Dog just has that one supporting actress and lead actor, and again, we're thinking Will Smith for lead actor and Ariana DeBose for supporting actress, so that kind of only leaves Power of the Dog. If it's going to win anything at SAG, it's going to be Kodi Smit-McPhee. So, I think that's the case, though. I kind of like, okay, if we look at some of the other Best Picture winners here at SAG, okay, Nomadland, I think, when it only had Frances, that one lost. Otherwise, Green Book, it didn't have ensemble, but they did give Mahershala Ali supporting actor. Parasite, it did get, the only one it got was ensemble, so that, and that one carried over. I think Shape of Water was the only other one recently to lose, if it had multiple nominations, and lose everything, but still win Best Picture. Because, otherwise, Moonlight did win supporting actor, so that one got some love there. Spotlight won the ensemble prize. Birdman won ensemble. 12 Years a Slave won for supporting actress for Lupita Nyong'o. Argo won for ensemble. The Artist, I believe, might have been shut out as well. Maybe. So it's kind of like an every few years thing. So maybe we're due for that. So maybe it is Troy that wins, and then it's like, okay, then Power of the Dog misses everything at SAG. It'd be kind of weird since it is such, it's such a small ensemble too. It's like, it's kind of like those 4 actors and that's kind of it. Yeah, I get there's other people in the movie, but their roles are so, cut down compared to the other 4 that it's like, yeah. Anyways, but, yeah. I don't know. Let's see. So those are kind of my arguments for now for just interesting conversations to have regarding the Oscars and stuff this year. Let's see. Let's go. Really fast. I'm going to try. I don't know about lightning speed. We'll definitely try to go through as fast as I can on the SAG race here. It's only 6, so we'll go. Stunt ensemble, I think it's No Time to Die. No Time to Die is to lose. Absolutely. Dune, I think we'll have some say there, but I think it's No Time to Die. It just kind of feels like, okay, that's the one to do it there. Supporting actress feels done. That's Ariana DeBose. Supporting actor, I don't know. If you're a betting man, I'll go ahead and say, okay, if you like your long shots, and I think if there's one that feels right, go with Troy. Otherwise, I think the smart money is on Kodi Smit-McPhee, because this is going to be the only really, really super logical place where Power of the Dog is going to win something at SAG. If it wasn't for that, if it had the ensemble nomination or something else, then I would say, okay, Troy feels really good. Then I would probably put him ahead. But since this is the scenario we're in, and I don't think Cumberbatch is winning, and I don't think Kirsten Dunst is winning, I think they got to give it to Kodi Smit-McPhee there. For lead actress, I am, again, really torn on this. I think Olivia, Jessica Chastain, and Nicole Kidman, I think all 3 of them are definitely in play here. Gaga and Hudson kind of feel like two of the more like bigger campaigners, the more youth crowd kind of voting for them. Obviously, that doesn't say the other three are like old hags or anything, but those two kind of feel like they warm up the crowd a little bit. They feel like the ones that get the popularist vote and stuff. And I think in that way they do kind of cross each other out. And I don't think either of those two are really primed to win. So I think obviously it comes down to the other three. So again, Olivia has not won a single, even on the TV side, has never won an individual SAG prize. She has a few ensemble prizes that she has, and wins and stuff, I mean. So I think, and again, Lost Daughter, its only nomination is here in lead actress, as it was a lot of places if they didn't have like a screenplay or something else to give it there. So I don't know if that's enough, because I thought she had a chance last year with The Father early on because of that thing. I don't think that's enough for her to win. So I think it comes down to the two kind of louder roles. Again, I think it's Jessica Chastain and Nicole Kidman. And I'm really torn on this. I'm just not really sure who to go with, even in this moment. So originally I had Nicole Kidman out front after the Globe win and stuff and everything. And being the Ricardos, even though it doesn't have the ensemble nomination, it does have Javier Bardem in there. So it does have a little more support. Tammy Faye didn't have anything else here, and it wasn't expected to get anything else. So at the moment, I do have Nicole Kidman ahead, but when I'm looking at this right now, I'm like, oh, do I want to change it? Do I want to go Jessica Chastain here? So right now, I do have Nicole Kidman. I've got a little bit of time here to think about it, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to do a whole bunch of coin flips or something and see who wins the most. I don't know, because it feels like such a coin flip there, where it's like, okay, both of them make a lot of sense. For the winner there. Lead actor, again, I think it's Will Smith here. Cumberbatch is the one to watch out for. If Andrew Garfield, really upsets here, okay, then we've got a potentially an interesting race here, where it could go any one of three ways. But I think it's Will Smith, and I'm in like the 60 to 70% range on that one for confidence. I think it feels like that's the way it's going to go, but there is some outside shots to watch out for. And then in the ensemble race, I think Belfast. I think Belfast feels like that smaller ensemble. It feels like it's got, it does have Katrina Balfe nominated, even though it did miss the two for supporting actor. Jamie Norton obviously fell out at the Oscars too, but it missed Ciarán Hinds, especially there in supporting actor. Even though it's missing that, we've seen like Spotlight. That missed in the two supporting actors as well for Michael Keaton and Mark Ruffalo especially when Keaton was still really discussed in the race there, but they both missed, and it was just Rachel McAdams that got in for supporting actress, and that still won ensemble. In the same way, we saw that one, even though I was going to say Trial of Chicago 7 last year, that one did have the stunt ensemble, which Belfast was really going to be out to lunch at, but that one didn't have a strong shot. But otherwise, that really only otherwise had the key nomination for Sacha Baron Cohen. So it's like, okay, and that one came through for ensemble. So I think Belfast is kind of in that crowd. Again, it's a smaller one. It's got kids in it, so sometimes those really go over well. More so with the nomination, not always with the win. But, Captain Fantastic and Jojo Rabbit and some of these other more recent ones. Beast of No Nation, of course. So that feels good there. But Coda is going to be really tough, though. This is very much like last year where you have, not to say it's the exact same, because obviously Trial of Chicago 7 felt like the big ensemble that year. And again, regardless of how Best Picture was going to go last year, my big bet for SAG was always Trial of Chicago 7. So I don't know if Coda, because Coda almost feels like a little bit like Minari last year, where it's like it's a very intimate family, everything there. Belfast would, I guess maybe in some ways also feel that way. Even though it's weird because it's like none of them are exactly like Trial of Chicago 7. Because other than, Don't Look Up, obviously it has the biggest cast here, but it's obviously, I don't think it's in that front runner status at all. If there's enough vote splitting that goes on, okay, then I can see an argument for King Richard or Don't Look Up to potentially come in and really upset and win. But I don't think there's enough of an argument there for me. Because Don't Look Up, even though it's got the picture nomination, it's gotten and it's got a film nomination pretty much everywhere. It could. I don't know. It was kind of I don't know. it just doesn't really feel like the one that SAG would go with. I don't know, but then again, you look at stuff like Hidden Figures, which was in the in quite a bit of stuff, but it never felt like a very serious to win Best Picture contender. The nomination was the win, in other words, for that one. Or you have Black Panther, which won here at Ensemble here a few years ago, where it's like, okay, that one was always in the discussion, but it was, other than as a really populist vote, it was never really huge in the discussion to win Best Picture. So I don't know. We could be overdue for that. This could be a year for something like that where Don't Look Up actually does win. But I'm not gonna put my money on it right away. I'm not gonna quite say that yet. I think because going into this, I thought, oh, it's Coda or Belfast for sure. But I'm kind of talking myself into saying, okay, maybe Don't Look Up is that really surprise one, that kind of out of left field one. That's like, okay, it doesn't really feel like our traditional winner here, but sometimes those are the ones that come through. And again, especially when we have kind of a split field there. And I think Coda, again, it's a film that has stuck around. It came out relatively early in the race, but stuck around and got key nominations everywhere it went. Kind of surprised us a little bit, especially at Globes and Critics' Choice. Or maybe not Critics' Choice. I thought it always had a better shot at Critics' Choice than Globes, for example. But, yeah, otherwise, and then I had it in kind of relatively early for SAG, but then I kind of took it out, and then I put it back in because it made sense, and I stuck with it. But yeah, I'm just I don't know. It feels like it's the right choice for some parts of it, the same way Minari did last year. But I don't know. And the thing too with Minari was, remember, that did have ensemble, but it had Yu Jun-yeon you could go with in supporting actress if you weren't going to give it ensemble. With Coda, it feels like, okay, obviously, if you don't go with Troy, you have to go with ensemble if you want to give it something. Belfast is the same argument. If you're not going Katrina Balfe, which very, 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 very likely is the case, you're not going with her. The only other place you can award Belfast is in ensemble. So, yeah, versus, especially like King Richard, that one you have Will Smith, so that one's going to win something there. House of Gucci, no. That one just feels like it's going to go over 3. But, and Don't Look Up, again, the only place it got in was ensemble here. So if you're going to award that one, this is, again, the only place to do it. But it's just strange. So I have Belfast, but again, I'm going to say it's kind of a 3-way race right now. And it's going to be tough. We're going to really pay attention to a couple other things here, like if there's any kind of word on the street, kind of rumblings that go around, like, okay, what films, if we hear, for example, like with the whole voting crowd of SAG, even though there's crossover between that and the Oscars too, but it's like, okay, if something kind of, we'll see how SAG does here. Like if they go Coda, for example, if that somehow wins like 2, okay, watch out. Then it looks like, okay, well, Troy feels a lot more secure then to upset for supporting actor. I don't know if it wins for screenplay or picture in that case, but or something like King Richard does, okay, then it's like, okay, well, is King Richard on the move now where it could win here, could really pull an upset at like PGA or something and win there, and then it's like, okay, could that one actually win Best Picture? I don't know. Otherwise, yeah, I'm not sure. Because, again, Belfast, it's like, okay, other than BAFTA or PGA, I don't really see another big spot for Belfast to kind of start making a move if it's going to start taking down something like Power of the Dog, for example, in picture. Where it's like, okay, because again, it doesn't have, because DGA it's in, but it's like, it doesn't feel like it's going to win there. BAFTA feels like they're going to go all in for Power of the Dog right now, even though I can see Belfast, like, especially if it, I'm thinking more of worst case scenario for BAFTA, for Belfast there actually, where if it loses like British film, okay, then we know it's really, really bad, because if the British, if the BAFTA doesn't go with Belfast well, obviously they didn't go for it in like directing and stuff, but if they don't go for it in British film, oh boy, that's a bad sign. That means some of the British voters just aren't, the European voters are just not going for it. So if they don't go for it there, they're not going to go for it at the Oscars. And again, something like Power of the Dog kind of almost has that European sensibility to it a little bit. Which helped out, some other films there in the past, like arguably Nomadland and arguably, what was the other one I was going to go to? Well, definitely for nominations, definitely something like Joker, I think, benefited there from that. Boy, there was one other example I was going to... Roma was one, too, maybe. And that one did pretty well at BAFTA, from what I recall. Got, like, picture director and stuff. So, yeah. Anyways, so I think BAFTA. I think even though Belfast does have a ton of nominations, even though it's set in Ireland, I still think Power of the Dog is probably going to be their more favored film there. Let's see here, because again, yeah, I don't see like PGA. I don't know how PGA could go for Belfast over Power of the Dog if all these other signs are kind of pointing toward Power of the Dog. I don't know. Again, I get there's the whole rooting factor. There's the one that makes you feel good and stuff. And this last year, really, if you go with 2021 just as a whole, had a lot of ups and downs, didn't it? It's like, okay, we started with January 6th, so we're like, ugh. So that felt bad. And then it's like, okay, well, then as we got into it, when we got into some of the summer months, it's like, oh, it felt like we really got a handle on COVID. It's like all these cases are going down, not only, especially in the U.S., but it's like worldwide, they're really starting to, and then here comes Delta, the Delta variant. And it's like, okay, then we kind of handled Delta better a little bit, and then here comes Omicron and everything. So, I don't know. And then especially with movies at the box office stuff, it's like, oh, we're kind of wobbly. Okay, Black Widow did some money. F9 made some money. Quiet Place Part 2 made some money. And then eventually it kind of wanes a little bit, here and there in the fall. Some movies make a little bit of money. And then Spider-Man way up here, just out of, the very top of the chart up to the next chart above, if that makes sense. You get what I mean? So it's like, it's a weird year. So in that way. So it's like, okay, if the voters are just really weirded out by all this stuff, maybe they do go with something that just makes them feel good. Because Power of the Dog is really not a feel-good movie in any way. Coda does have some warm, gooey, kind of emotional stuff to it, so I can understand that one getting some love there. King Richard has some moments of that too. Don't Look Up, definitely not. Not to give anything away, but especially when you get to the last act of that film, that is a very, very more pessimistic, not optimistic film. And yeah, Power of the Dog, again, I think it's got almost like I don't want to say if it's a downer ending, but it's definitely got an ending that makes you say, ooh, well. And having not seen this version of West Side Story, for example, that one as well, obviously if you've seen the original film, that one has a downer ending. It's a Romeo and Juliet thing, so it doesn't end well for the lovers and stuff. So, let's see what else here for picture nominees and stuff. What else has like that kind of upper kind of ending and stuff? Like, Dune, not so much. I haven't seen Licorice Pizza yet. Maybe that one does have some. It looks like it's a kind of more comedic stuff and everything. I don't know. So maybe that one has a little bit of an upper of an ending. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah. Because I think some people do talk about sometimes like the Best Picture nominees like being, or especially the winners kind of being like respective of their years and stuff. Like, like it feels like it fits the year. Like No Country for Old Men was a darker, kind of more graphic film. It's like, well, we were pretty far into the second term of George W. Bush, and we had gone through several years of, the wars in the Middle East and stuff. So it's like that kind of fit the mood and stuff. Stuff like Moonlight, it's like, okay, we just saw Donald Trump win, and I know a lot of people, especially on the West Coast and some people on the East Coast, were like, oh, we're really mad at that. We're going to go with something that made us kind of a rebel vote. So something like Moonlight really benefited from that. Let's see here, what else? Parasite, that one kind of felt like kind of an upper thing, because it's like, we're kind of, getting into the next decade and stuff, and we're going to try to break through some barriers and stuff and all that, give people more chances and stuff with giving us a different film for Best Picture, something that's not produced in Hollywood or in Europe, something from Asian cinema and everything. So I don't know. It's like some of that. I don't know. So I don't know if our mood is so much where it's like Power of the Dog is a really encapsulating that. Some people could argue it is, because this year it's like not just outside of that stuff, but it's like, okay, well, you've had I'm trying to think what else we've had this year. In 2021, like since the Oscar season began, it's like, well, some people are really bugged by inflation. Some people are bugged by the Afghanistan thing was a pretty bad look. Ukraine, we're going to see how that goes. I haven't paid much attention to that one. Some people are really upset with like the trucker thing going up in Canada. I haven't followed that very well, so I couldn't tell you that what the latest on that is or whatever. But I know they're upset about, I think, the vaccine mandates or something in Canada. But anyways. I don't know. So I'm trying to think of more examples and stuff, and I'm kind of extending this maybe more than I need to. But anyways, there's always a lot of stuff to talk about with this, especially after we get the nominations out and we've had a little bit of time to sit and think with these films and be like, okay, which ones could benefit, which ones, since we've talked about them Oscar morning, have we forgotten about or just taken for granted, or all that stuff. So yeah, and it's kind of a period there where it's going to be a little quiet until we start getting some of these Guild Awards with their winners, like SAG and Directors Guild. Obviously, when Producers Guild, Writers Guild come around, then we'll be really close, BAFTA and everything. So we got a little bit of time there, a little bit of downtime. So I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and start circling all these kind of, maybe not conspiracy theories, but definitely these different theories about how all this stuff is going to pan out here over the next couple weeks. So yeah, I think I've talked myself into enough corners and conversations and stuff for you guys to chew on for a couple weeks, and we'll come back after a little while. We'll do probably final SAG winner predictions will be the next video. So we got a little over a week for that. So, okay, like I said, a couple of those SAG categories, like actress and especially ensemble, those two, really feel like they're up in the air right now. So I'll do some thinking. Do some thinking on those. We'll get back to you.